We often think about our brains as being built kind of like a super complex computer. But what if that's just the wrong way to look at it? A much better and honestly a way more amazing way to think about it is like sculpting. See, our brain isn't just constructed, it's carved. It's refined from this massive raw block of material into the masterpiece it becomes.
So how does this incredible sculpting actually happen? Well, we're going to walk through the whole process. We'll start with the huge wiring challenge the brain faces right at birth, and then we'll see how it builds this wild overabundance of connections. After that comes the really dramatic part, the great synaptic pruning. We'll find out how our own experiences are the sculptor's chisel, and finally, we'll see how this amazing process of change never really stops.
All right, so it all kicks off with a paradox. To get the beautifully ordered, intricate network of an adult brain, nature starts with, well, it starts with total and utter chaos. Now that might sound a little dramatic, but wiring nightmare is actually a pretty good description. A newborn's brain is not some neat little blueprint. Oh no, it's a tangled explosion of possibility, where every single neuron is making thousands of connections, creating this dense, messy, disorganized web. And from that chaos, a mind has to be carved. And check this out. This graph here shows something truly incredible. Just look at the lines for both humans and monkeys. That massive spike in synapse density, it doesn't happen in the womb. It literally explodes after we're born. This is nature giving the brain a huge, raw block of marble to work with. This over-the-top level of connection is what makes us so flexible and allows for so much learning in those early years. But how does the brain even create this incredibly dense, exuberant network in the first place? Well, this process has a name. It's called synaptogenesis. So synaptogenesis is just the creation of all these connections. Think of it like this. During development, a neuron's axon reaches out like a tiny explorer, trying to navigate this incredibly complex landscape of the brain to find its target. This is a time of just massive, widespread connection making, laying down the basic scaffolding for everything we will ever think, feel, or do. This slide shows us what a successful connection actually looks like. So here, a nerve terminal has found a muscle cell, but just getting there isn't enough. To make that connection stick, the nerve has to send out a signal that convinces the muscle to build a dedicated little receiving dock, or what we call an end plate. If that conversation doesn't happen, the connection just fails. So it really all comes down to a chemical handshake. The nerve terminal releases a signal like this protein called egrin. If that signal is received the right way and it causes the target cell to cluster its receptors together, then boom, the handshake is complete. That connection is stabilized and it gets to survive. But if that handshake fails, if the signal doesn't get through, the connection is considered useless and it gets eliminated. It's a massive, massive trial and error system. And this whole process of elimination brings us right to the most critical part of the sculpting process. After creating this insane overabundance of connections, the brain starts to chisel away all the excess. This is what we call the great synaptic pruning. Okay, just look at this. This is one of the most powerful visuals in all of developmental neuroscience. On the left, you've got that dense, chaotic jungle of early development. And on the right, the refined, much more efficient network of the mature brain. The brain literally gets rid of more than half of the synapses it first creates. It's an absolutely dramatic and totally essential process of refinement. This process is called synaptic pruning, and it's not about loss, it's about optimization. It's how the brain takes that initial wiring nightmare and turns it into a lean, mean, incredibly powerful processing machine. So who are the actual sculptors doing this really precise work? Well, a huge role is played by the brain's tiny immune cells, the microglia. You can think of them as microscopic gardeners, just patrolling the neural neighborhood, identifying the weak or unnecessary connections, and literally gobbling them up to clear the way for a stronger network. But wait a minute, how do the microglia know which synapses to get rid of? This process isn't random at all. It's guided by the single most important factor in development, experience. The activity happening in our neurons is the ultimate signal that shapes the brain. This quote really gets to the heart of the guiding principle, which we often sum up as neurons that fire together, wire together. Think of it like paths in a forest. The trails you walk on all the time become clear and strong. The ones you never use get overgrown and disappear. It's the same in the brain. When a synapse is active at the same time as its neighbors, it's strengthened. But if it's quiet or out of sync, it gets weaker and gets marked for pruning. It truly is use it or lose it. And we have really powerful proof for this.
If you compare animals raised in an enriched environment, with lots of social interaction and new things to explore, to animals raised in a boring, empty cage, you can see physical differences in their brains. The brain from the enriched environment has more synapses, more support cells, even a more complex blood supply. This shows, without a doubt, that experience physically builds a more complex brain.
Let's just let that number sink in for a second. More than 50%. Over half of all the connections the brain works so hard to create are eventually destroyed. This isn't some small adjustment. This is a massive remodeling project driven entirely by experience that actually defines the architecture of who we become.
But here's the really cool part. This sculpting doesn't just stop when we're kids. Your brain keeps its amazing ability to change throughout your entire life. And that brings us to our final key idea, lifelong plasticity. Neuronal plasticity is the official term for this ongoing ability of our nervous system to be reshaped by its own activity. It's the fundamental reason we can learn things, make memories, and adapt to new situations. The sculpture is truly never finished. And you see this plasticity in action every single day of your life. When you learn a new skill, like riding a bike, you are literally forging and strengthening specific neural pathways just by repeating the action. When you memorize facts for a class, you're changing how strong existing synapses are. And forming long-term memories can actually cause the physical growth of new connections. Your brain is physically changing with every single new thing you learn.
And this all brings us to one last, pretty profound thought. This whole process of synaptic sculpting, it's not just a story about how we developed as a baby. It's happening in your brain right now. The information you're learning from me is subtly changing the connections between your neurons. So if our experiences are the chisel and our brain is the marble, what kind of masterpiece are you sculpting today?